So now you're going to tell everybody what's going on. And,
I'm going to tell everybody what's going on.
Everyone's going to complain and say no after show. Hugh said, I think we'll give you a pass if there's no after show on Tuesday. I'm just saying.
That's what he said. He says he'll give me one day off.
Yeah, well, as Xerxes said in the 300, I am a generous God.
Pretty much. Thanks, James.
Talk to you next week.
See ya. Bye. Okay, so let's talk about what we're talking about. As many of you know, I have been fighting cancer on and off for about, almost 4 years now. And what I'm dealing with right now is it is time to cut stuff out. Stuff is not necessarily that much bigger than it was. It's not really that much smaller than it was. It's mostly just kind of stagnant. We have been operating under the assumption that the thing in my chest was related to the thing in my neck, and that's why it was called metastasis, and I was a stage 4 patient, and Western medicine couldn't do anything for me. Get your bucket list in order, and you're going to probably check out in a year or two. Now, the staff that I have seen, oncologist, ear, nose, and throat guy, and thoracic surgeon that are based out of St. John's, is telling me that the likelihood that the thing in my chest is related to the thing in my neck is about 0%. Now, that doesn't mean they know exactly what this is, and where it happens to be placed is not exactly a good spot for it to be taking up residence, and so we need to go get it out. Once we know what it is, then we kind of know how to move forward from there. And so the appointment was last Tuesday, actually, Tuesday morning, when we went up to say, actually, that was a couple weeks ago. And we decided to schedule the surgery to pull it out this week. And basically, the question was, okay, so what do we do? Do we needle biopsy it and stick a needle about that long and go in there and root yourself around until you hit the joy buzzer and not, light up the nose in the operation game? Or how do we get this thing out? Or what do we do? And the long and the short of it was, it's better to do what's called a thoracoscopy, which is they take 3 little holes in the side, kind of below your armpit. And one hole is for an air hose to blow up your chest so that you used to look like when you ate a bunch of Cheetos. Another hole goes in there and sticks a little camera and light in there. And then a third hole is like a little snake drain that has all the little tools that come out and does all the snipping and clipping and cauterizing and all the stuff they do. So that in and of itself doesn't sound too problematic. I mean, I had a laparoscopy a couple of years ago to have my gallbladder removed, as many people in the after show know, because I, for some reason, can't keep my private life to myself. And that was not very problematic. They went in laparoscopy and they took out the gallbladder, and I recovered fairly quickly from that. No real major deal. This is a little bit different because when you're talking about your chest and you're talking about getting where this thing is, which, by the way, is like right by the pericardial thing, which means my heart. And that gets a little dicey. It's close enough that as long as it's not attached, which they don't think it is, then we don't really have a problem. If it's just kind of on the wall next to it and it's not really attached, then it's not too hard to just clip that little sucker off and take it out. The only problem is they have to deflate your lung to get there. Now, I wouldn't normally recommend deflating a good lung because, well, I mean, they're going to reinflate it afterwards. It's not like they're going to leave it deflated forever. They're not going to pull a lung out. But it's going to be a little bit harder to recover from what they're telling me than a gallbladder surgery. So they're going to do this on Monday at high noon. Or at noon, I get high on whatever the goofy gas is, and they put me out. And then they go in and take this thing out. It's supposed to be an hour-long procedure. And if all goes well, and I respond well, and get up out of bed and walk around, and everything goes the way it's supposed to go, I should be able to go home Tuesday afternoon, hopefully. Worst case, maybe Wednesday. Well, technically, worst case, I don't go home, huh? Worst case, I guess what happens is you have Duane FM shows queued up until the end of March, and then, well, I guess that will be my legacy. But I don't think that's going to be worst case scenario. What they're going to do is they're going to pull this sucker out, and they're going to figure out what the heck it is. And there's a possibility that it's just a cyst that glows up a little bit on a PET CT scan, and it's not cancerous at all. That's certainly a possibility. It could be a little low-grade tumor that got thrown out by a thymus gland called a thymoma. Could be that. Outside chance it could be a lymphoma, but the oncologist kind of doesn't think that's a possibility because none of my other lymph nodes seem to be a problem right now, meaning, all the other spots around my chest and everywhere. I'm not exactly showing signs of lymphoma everywhere, so he doesn't think that's a real high likelihood. But we don't know what it is, but we've got to take out what's there. And so we're going to take out what's there. Once that hurdle's crossed, and then I go through the recovery period of that, which, by the way, means that I'm probably going to be out of commission for at least a couple of days. I would like to be back at some point next week, but I just don't know what I don't know. I've never had my lung deflated. I've never had my lung reinflated. I tend to deflate and inflate my own lung, thank you very much, and have done so for 49 years quite successfully. I've never had anybody do that for me. But we'll see. Once all that's done and I recover from that, then we schedule with the ENT to go in and take the thing out of my neck. And that's going to be the cool part, because once they take the thing out of my neck, they do what's called gene sequencing, which is where they find out what the genetic mutation is that caused this thing to come back in the first place. And then they can kind of reverse engineer and do all sorts of cool things to be able to make sure it doesn't come back again. Kind of like a vaccine, but not really a vaccine. A little bit different. Actually, a lot different. And that doesn't even count what the docs here want to do, because if I'm not stage 4, meaning the chest thing is kind of its own thing and we can just fix that on its own, and that's no longer the neck thing spreading, well, then you're only a stage 2 regional treatment, and we can take care of this thing. And that doesn't necessarily mean we have to deal with chemo and radiation, which I really don't want to do. There's all sorts of immunodrugs that, if I decide to go down this road, that I could theoretically do for this, that these drugs and this kind of immunotherapy wasn't even in existence 4 or 5 years ago when this whole thing started percolating up. So there's all sorts of things that are going to happen down the road, but we've got to sequence it and figure out what caused it to begin with, and then we can design a cure for it, which would actually be kind of nice to put this thing to bed once and for all. Got to get this thing done before we go back to the convention and let this thing percolate and cook even longer. All the stuff they threw at me in Germany, it didn't necessarily make it worse. It didn't make it worse. It didn't necessarily make it a whole lot better, though. So it just kind of is in a holding pattern. And I'm tired of holding. I want this thing done. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. So, I'm starting to, I know. My Thymoma was my favorite pop song from the 80s. If I had a producer, I'd go out with My Thymoma by the Knack, but I'm not going to do that. I'm doing my own thing. Not Gene Simmonsing. No, I get that. If Duane is relaxed, I don't intend to light my hair on fire. Sorry if I offended. No, I have apprehension about this, like I have apprehension about facing any surgical procedure. I think anybody would have a little bit of apprehension about something going on inside them while they're on night gas. But I'm kind of sanguine about it because, to me, where I think I am now compared to where I thought I was a year ago, which was a stage 4 patient and all is lost and you're just trying to cheat death again. If this is not a stage 4 and they can go in and clean this thing up and everything's copacetic with this, then we take the next step and we clean up the neck thing, and then we can really attack it to make sure it doesn't come back. Well, that actually sounds to me like there's a possible game plan down the road. So that's to me shows there's enough hope and promise in there. I'm actually very sanguine about this whole thing. I'm not in my head, I'm going to try and talk myself into recovering very quick because I want to be very positive about this. But knowing full well that it's going to probably kick me right in the you-know-whats because it's going to be I'm going to be pretty sore for a few days. I might be sore for a week. I might be sore for a month. I have no idea what I'm going to be sore for. I've got to decide whether or not I'm going to talk I don't know, maybe I can Twitter my way through the recovery process. I wonder if it would be, it probably wouldn't be a good idea to tweet on a pain pump. That probably would be a bad thing. I could say all sorts of things. I could, you could ask me anything at that point. Who knows what I might say? I mean, that's probably not a good idea. Anyway, so that's what's going on. So after show will probably not take place for, I wish I could tell you how long. I don't know how long. Hopefully just a few days. I don't know until we get out of recovery and they tell me what they tell me and we see if I can actually breathe. But I will do everything I can to expedite the recovery process and return here, whatever I've got to do.